This is my favorite build I have ever played in thousands of hours of Path of Exile. It is my Forbidden Rite Pathfinder Poison Self-Cast. A lot of people seem to share the sentiment as well, as they've been asking me about how this is going to look in 3.21. I've got a preliminary update, and this is what that is, so be warned. Alright, so before we go into the depth of this preliminary update, be warned, this is not a League starter. This is not a League start friendly build. It is not a cheap build. I am working on the budget version. I am still considering adjustments to be made, but this is simply a preliminary update to my end game version for the incoming League, the Crucible League 3.21. So don't get freaky with me. I'm still working on it. I will, however, post updated POBs in the description box below or otherwise on my Discord. I will try to keep it up to date, or perhaps post a new video with any relevant new information as well as gameplay, because I do expect a lot to be changing with those Crucible skill trees. However, let's get to some numbers. Our single target is still incredible. This is a permanent single target. I'm not using any kind of temporary buffs. It's 38 million, so we're dot capped. Very lovely. We have over 200% movement speed, which is incredible. We have nearing 6k life, which is very lovely. A little bit of evasion. Spell suppressed, of course. We have decent tank, and this is without any guard skills. You can have a guard skill that works with this to make it even crazier. And other than that, you can also get more movement speed with Val Haste, because like I said, this is permanent movement speed. And with Val Haste, we get even higher, and you can even make other adjustments to push it even further. So these numbers are really good. We have 7, nearly 8 casts a second as well. And it is quite a lovely powerhouse. Now, once again, end game, right? So be wary. And this is not even like the full end game power that you might be able to achieve. And this is also not even considering Crucible. So it's only going to get crazier from here. Now, let's take a look at the tree first and foremost. It's very similar. I think if you have played Pathfinder or Poison in this side of the tree, then it looks very similar. Of course, you path to get some good value nodes here. We pick up Charisma, the basic wonderful Chaos node. Well, we did lose the Chaos.multi. We, however, are picking up the Wither buff to facilitate the Ascendancy. We'll get to that in just a second. Pick some more life up. We do pick up the Evasion Mastery, so we're losing the Spell Suppress Mastery on the Spell Suppress, but we get a slightly better version on the Evasion Mastery. Since we were not using Grace mana reservation here anyway, since we're not using Grace, it's all good. We still use a Brutal Restraint. However, we are not using the Trader anymore in this version. You could still use it if you want to run Dying Sun and a Micro Belt. I have, however, decided to use against that due to some new secret tech that people forgot about, including myself, that was introduced in 3.20 regarding a certain flask. But we'll get to that. So you can actually find a Brutal Restraint cheaper because you don't need this particular keystone. So you might be able to find your flask charges gained or your faster poison on a different keystone that might be much, much cheaper. We still pick up Careful Conservationist, more Flask. Anything that's Flask related, we pick up. Spell Suppress, of course. That's where we get the Gem Slot, more life, Flask Recovery Rate, all that good stuff. Very valuable nodes here. We do pick up Natural Remedies. No Mastery required because we don't need... in this version of the build, we already have everything up 100%, so we don't need to pick up the Flask Charge on Crit, which might be useful in the early game, nor do we have to pick up the extra node here. Also more life as well, because life equals tank, but also damage for Forbidden Rite. Pick up the Fatal Toxins, the Poison Mastery. Not much has changed here. More life. We do pick up the Life Mastery, the 50 at least. Now, this is a new wheel. This is a life recoup wheel. Barely a wheel. This makes us have greater recoup, but the real reason we're picking this up is life recoup effects occur over 3 seconds. Normally it's 4 seconds, so it's 25% faster. That could be huge. Now, we already knew it worked with 4 seconds, right? If you have the Stasis Prison. But this might actually make it work even better if you just have the Doppelgangers guys prior to the Stasis Prison. which makes the build still work as well with minor adjustments. I'll get to that in just a second as well. But this just makes your tank and more your sustain even tankier and sustainier. So a very lovely buff if you decide to pick it up. It is not mandatory, but it is a huge boon. More life, get the strength as well, because we are a little starved at certain points in our gearing. Of course, the Serpentine Spellslinger wheel, we take the entire damn thing. Now, normally we would actually take a Curse Crit Mastery, but since we lost the Poison Mastery, we would normally take for single target here, the Slower, I believe it was. We actually take the enemy's poison, but you cannot deal critical strikes. So as opposed to the Curse Mastery, where you take 40% reduced extra damage from critical strikes, we just don't take crits. So it's a little buff there. We do pick up, of course, the Whispers of Doom with the curse effect. We go around for area of effect, because we are not self-casting our curses at all. It's automated for us. On top of that, it's 2 giant clusters. Unspeakable Gifts will help with the clear, because it's corpse explosions, which is lovely. Pick up a little bit of Touch of Cruelty here for some more damage, as well as Wicked Pal, and of course Unwavering Evil. We only need 1 note of that because of the stuns. And then we pick up a lot of medium clusters because we're trying to get Brood for potency. We are trying to max out our Flask charges game because we no longer have the Trader. So we need to get those extra charges elsewhere, and we don't have the Sanctum either. So we pick up Brood for potency, Float of Life. There's a nice Watcher's Eye. We're picking up nice Kobold Jewels, Life, Chaos Damage of them. There's some other really good prefixes you can add on top of that, including Flask Duration if you're lucky. Maybe some Reservation, some other stuff that kind of comes with these Kobold Jewels, depending on what you have access to and what you craft. We can pick up a single Fasting. This allows us to get the 100% uptime on everything without having to kill anything. Spiked Concoction remains a staple. It is mandatory. It's such a good buff. And it will be up permanently for us. And then we pick up more Brood for Potency, Float of Life, Brood for Potency. These are perfect clusters for us. They don't even have anything on it, so you don't have to worry too much about it. I think there's only 1 cluster that we have in this setup that has +2 attributes, I think. Where is it? I know I have one of them. There it is. Just 1 node of +2 attributes to make sure we have enough intelligence, and that's it. Other than that, they're all empty, so you can maybe get some regen, maybe some bonus resistance, maybe some other stats to help gear. So you have a lot of wiggle room there still. Other than that, in terms of the tree, nothing really has changed. You could give up clusters and maybe try some Dance of Blades if you're nutty, or sacrifice some life, because we do have plenty, and pick up maybe a Mage Bane if you need some spell suppress or trying to prevent spell suppress from gearing. I haven't really experimented with that since I was using or attempted to use Mage Bane in the previous league on the Relic. There's also, of course, other wonderful Flask nodes on the tree still. And speaking of Flask nodes on the tree, the Ascendancy will look like this for us. We're actually not picking up Master Surgeon because we don't need it. We recoup, in this version of the build, this endgame version of the build, we recoup damage incredibly well, incredibly fast. You heard us, we heal more. That's how it works. We do pick up Master Toxicist, just more damage. Nature's Reprisal gives us access to Wither. And of course, increase effective Wither, which is massive. Which is also one of the reasons we pick up Chaos Mastery, because we have many hits going off. And this will facilitate smoothing out the maximum uptime of Withered buffs, which is very good. Nature's Adrenaline, obviously, Flask Sustain, important, necessary, needed. And Nature's Boon, this is a new one for us. This is some new tech. So let's take a look at the gear, which means also the gear, the tech should become, well, you should be able to tell, because the tech is right there. So we'll start off with the beginning. We have the basic Serpent Wand, can also be a Rune Dagger. I have a crafting video on this, so I won't get too stuck on it. Thorium Spirit Shield. I think I have a part of my crafting video is also dedicated to this shield. It's all pretty deterministically crafted. Frenzy charges are not needed, but they're nice. They allow you to maximize the Tailwind, Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame Jewels, but if you don't have those, you can also just run other benefits of this, or maybe don't run a synth base, but maybe get a better, easier time crafting what you see here. Like, you have options, essentially. This is what I chose. We have a basic, very lovely helm. The Despair Curse is not even the optimal curse. The Temporal Chain is the optimal curse. We can also opt for a Forbidden Rite enchantment. For this version, due to the fact that we have dropped a particular unique flask. So we lose a little bit of single target, but we would gain a little bit of clear. Not necessary. The AoE gems are not necessary either. They're just there because I wanted to pick up the area of effect. They're still nice though. The Stasis Prison. This is the central piece of the build. This is your endgame item. I had a mirror tier double corrupt this last league, but just a regular Stasis Prison will do. You can also run a double ganger if you want. With minimal changes. You just have to change a skill gem or two, but I put that in the notes as well. If you scroll down, there you go. So it should be pretty self-explanatory, but Stasis Prison is the dream. Beyond that, it's very simple. Just trying to secure my resistances, get the spell suppress sorted, get some life, because like I said, that's effective hit points, that's tank, it's damage. Make sure you get the 10% chance to poison on hit, which allows you to become poison capped. I thought it was 15%, but it seems to be only 10% for this particular iteration of the build. Action speed, incredible, of course. Poisons faster, incredible. This enchantment is mandatory. I write more about the mandatory mana sustain in the note section. Eternal Struggle. This is not even the best version. This is the only version I got. This will help facilitate all your stats. A little bit of global defense, as well as, most importantly, the culling effect. So make sure the correct influence is dominant, because killing enemies that have 15% or lower life on hit, and we are doing a lot of hits, is incredible. Vermilion Rings. Yes, I crafted 20 of these and never hit the actual Crusader one that I want, but these are incredibly predeterministically crafted. So don't worry about it. They look impressive, but they're really just there for the recoup. Then there's a craft on it, some life, some cast speed, some strength. Very easy. You can find the videos on my YouTube channel. The Stygian Vice is the new one. As you can see, we normally would have gone with a micro distillery belt, but in this case I opted for a Stygian. Not only does this allow me to have an extra gem slot, or a jewel slot on the talent tree, or the passive tree, it also allows me to take a 5th flask, which is what we're trying to build around right now. Other than that, it's a very simple Hunter Stygian. You can also hit chaos damage here. You have less life, but you get chaos damage. So the slam is very simple. It's mostly important to have the reduced flask charges high roll. That's the best one. You can also with increased flask charges gained. It's a little less effective, but still very powerful. As long as the tier 1, you should be fine. Flask applied, have increased effect because we're trying to amp up the effect still. And a little bit of life to top it off. The Searing Eye. The reason why you want a Searing Eye, or at least not a Searing Eye, but a Abyssal Jewel, is because of the phasing. Other than that, get damage over time, life, whatever is useful, whatever is helpful. Progenesis is still central to our tank. Incredibly broken flask. I can't believe they left it in and untouched it, or didn't even touch it at all. Taste of Hate is a big part of our physical mitigation, which is the reason why we have so much physical mitigation without even using a guard skill or having any armor. Quicksilver. Now, as you can see, we have cast speed here with a Alchemist, 100% uptime, not even average uptime. This is genuine 100% uptime. Now, what you could do here is move or change the cast speed into movement speed. Like if you turn it in tier 1 movement speed, you have a base movement speed of 260 plus or so. You can also add any other buff here. Maybe you want to add some elemental resistance because you're gearing up still and you want to facilitate the gearing process a bit more. You could do that. You can facilitate all of that. You can do the same thing with the silver flask. This is the reason why we're using a 5th flask. People have forgotten that in 3.2, onslaught on the flask got changed to be buffable by buff effect or flask buff effect. So we are cranking up the silver flask to get a lot of movement speed, a lot of cast speed, and even a little bit of attack speed as a result, of course, if you are degenerate enough to run shield charge. So this is a lot of value for us. If I turn this off, I lose millions of damage. I lose incredible amount of movement speed. And of course, we don't have any other way of gaining onslaught on bosses. We could get it on boots still. With the Betrayal Craft, I believe it is. But unfortunately... Oh, no, that's not a Quicksilver. Silver Flask. But as you can see here on the boots, I've ripped them off. We can actually get more movement speed now, or get one of those movement speeds with an alternative effect, although I don't know, like the chill doesn't matter because we are immune to ailments, and the on-hit effect doesn't work because we are constantly hitting ourselves. So we can actually get a tier 1 increased movement speed ourselves to get more movement speed if we are lucky enough to craft all the other stuff as well. Because we do need the Chaos Rest. We don't need the Lightning Rest. We are slightly overcapped. Okay, so we do need it. But the Spell Suppress is the most important part. Of course, the mandatory enchantment. But as you can see, we're no longer need the actual Betrayal Onslaught movement speed combo. So it might make this a little easier. Perhaps it makes it a little more difficult, depending on how you look at it. Other than that, we also have a Ruby Flask. We did drop the Dying Sun and instead run just a regular Ruby. Depending on the crafts you put on the Ruby, you could still run the Dying Sun. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it doesn't have uptime. So you can run it during mapping, which is where it's strongest because of all the extra projectiles. But Forbidden Rite can only hit with 5 projectiles on a single target. The rest goes to other folk. So you can run Dying Sun for the smoothest mapping experience, and then switch to a regular Ruby for bossing. On top of that, if you are going bossing, you probably are best off switching to a Jade Flask. Perhaps one with evasion rating or just with cast speed if you're looking for damage. To facilitate certain things like Uber Eater and the tentacle thingies. They are quite painful, I'm afraid. But you can mix and match to what you have available to your own personal play style. And of course, we don't know how the Crucible is going to interact. Maybe we get all kinds of crazy things that would facilitate even better stuff or completely make certain things obsolete. We don't know. The medium clusters already went over. The Watcher's Eye, I went with a physical damage to elemental and a vitality. Now, if you do run the Stasis Prism already, you can just run double physical damage to element if you are affected by Purity of Elements, obviously. In a perfect world, you would get 2 of those and then also the Vitality. I think that would be best, but that's also... Last league, that costed like 100 Divines, which... Nutty. Absolutely nutty. We got the basic clusters. Yeah, we are running Gathering Winds. As I explained in that previous video, the only reason why we are running Gathering Winds is because we already have the Synth Shield. If you don't have the Synth Shield and you're looking for damage, Way of the Poacher is best. Way of the Poacher gives us access to Frenzy Charge generation. You could also go for Permanent Onslaught through this if you don't want to use a Silver Flask, but I would advise against it. You could also pick up other stuff. Endless Munitions is a possibility. Since we don't have Dying Sun, this would help give you that permanent extra projectiles. You have options. Way of the Poacher is probably just best for single target if you don't have the Synth Shield, simply because of how Frenzy Charges work, and they're quite comfy. Other than that, already went over the Brutal Restraint, already went over the Jewels right here. So let's move to the skills. Not much has changed. We're still running Malevolence, Enlighten, Purity of Elements, Herald of Agony. We have no more need for a self-casting Despair, so we have removed that from the list, but we still run Despair in our cast when damage taken link with Temporal Change. This is what facilitates the auto-cursing. Very obvious. If you do have a 21, make sure your cast when damage taken is also high enough level. Be wary of that. Vow Haste on the Divine Blessing. So it's pretty much up all the time. And of course, we also have the Vow option. As you can see, this is 235. 38 million without Vow Haste, and then we click it and it's 42 million DPS, 266 speed with Vow Haste active. I just used it on the left click, but you can also just time it correctly if you wish to macro it that way. Purifying Flame speaks for itself. Divergent, increased damage taken. Forbidden Rite, cast when damage taken with GMP, because normally we wouldn't have to run this. You can maybe run a blind or anything crazy like that, or maybe some early culling if you don't have the neck piece yet. But since we do not have Dying Sun, we are losing a little bit of projectile value for single target if we run Forbidden Rite. Luckily enough, if you don't have Stasis Prison yet, you don't want to run Forbidden Rite, you want to run Blazing Salvo, you can do that. Or if you are more of a defender of the Lightning Ball, we had a discussion about this in stream today. I am not a big fan of the Lightning Ball. Where is it? Search for balls. There you go, Ball Lightning. You can also do that. As long as you don't run Stasis Prison, but if you run the Doppelganger, you would not want to run Forbidden Rite. You want to run either Blazing Salvo or Ball Lightning. If you are going to run Ball Lightning, you are mandatory to greater GMP or greater multiple projectiles. If you run Blazing Salvo, GMP is still very strong, but you can also maybe do an early culling if you don't have the neck, or maybe a blind for some more evasion buffing. You have some options here. I am personally my personal preference is Blazing Salvo because it's more consistent and still strong in AoE. Ball Lightning is just weird, even with GMP. It only hits 3 targets on average, single target wise, the way it interacts. Even with slower projectiles, it's only predicted to have 4. Blazing Salvo at the correct level for cast from damage taken is always going to hit 3, maybe 4 projectiles onto a single target, and then also has the wider spread on top of that. So I don't know, it's up to you, but this is what I would recommend. Forbidden Rite. And if you don't have the Doppelgangers, guys, or don't have Stasis Prison and run Doppelgangers, guys, run Blazing Salvo. Other than that, the actual Forbidden Rite link, the big boy, speaks for itself. Forbidden Rite GMP Anomalous is mandatory due to the cost reduction. You can see more about that in the notes. Awaken Deadly Ailment, Spell Echo Anomalous. Yes, it is the best option because Awaken doesn't do anything. Awaken Void Manip, of course, and Unbound Ailments, speaks for itself. Just good quality poison stuff. Flame Dash is mandatory. Can go up and down when it comes down to terrain or through things because it's a teleport. If you are a degenerate, you can maybe tech in a shield charge and a faster attack. But if you feel like you need that when you have 235 permanent speed, you and I will not be friends. Vitality is important if you have the Watcher's Eye. If you don't have the Watcher's Eye, Vitality is not needed. And then Immortal Coal is a potential. Immortal Coal is a potential defensive skill. As you can see, these are our tank numbers on the left. We hit Immortal Coal. That's pretty respectable. This could be a mandatory emergency button. Or maybe if you're feeling particularly frisky, you can maybe sacrifice certain things on the tree and maybe tech in a Enduring Composure, I believe it is, because we're constantly hitting ourselves, so we'll be up permanently. Or maybe if you find a really good Megalomania, you can maybe get Fasting, Spiked Concoction, and then also Enduring Composure, or maybe a Brute Potency and Flow of Life. Or maybe a Brute Potency and a Fasting and an Enduring Composure. You know what I mean? Like, you get some good nodes on there. You will lose a gem slot, but you will get permanent Enduring charges that can then be used to amp up Immortal Coal, which will last for over 2 seconds, I believe. So it's a pretty big emergency button. If you use the Enduring charges, the physical damage becomes quite significant. You're basically immortal with this build. And that's about it. That's kind of the preliminary update. I will keep it updated on the description box below. Otherwise, I will post a new video, so keep an eye out. I am still working on the budget version. It's a bit more tricky than I thought. I think I have to maybe do some creative stuff with the recoup. Other than that, I hope you can find yourself a wonderful League starter, because this is not a League starter. I'm planning myself to maybe do some... maybe I'll do a Toxic Rain Pathfinder. There seems to be some possibilities there for a nice switch. I've also heard good things about certain options regarding the Cold Dots, Tricksters, Saboteurs. There's crazy things on foot. I'm really excited for the new league, so keep an eye out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this gave you an update. Links are below, including the POB, obviously. But thank you so much. Catch you guys next time.